Hi students, my name is Miss Prasandria Limburg Finance, and in this grade 7 social studies lesson, we'll be discussing a very important topic, rules relating to traveling by land. In our last lesson, we looked at rules and their importance when traveling. We looked at the 3 different modes of transport and we identified them as air, water, and land. Here is something to note. Transport is important because it enables the movement of goods, services, and people from one place to another. In this lesson, we'll be looking at rules that are set up for our safety and protection, specifically as it pertains to traveling by land. When traveling by land, there is something critical that we must consider as it pertains to rules, and these are signs and symbols. So we'll be looking at signs and symbols and the correct attitude that we should adopt when we're traveling by land. Remember in our last lesson, we looked at rules that we should observe when traveling by land. Can you think of some others? Remember we said you'd have to walk on the right side of the road. You must always use the pedestrian crossing whenever crossing the street or road. Vehicles traveling on the road must observe their designated speed limits, and motor vehicles must have brakes, lights, etc., and they must be maintained in good working conditions. But what I want us to do is think of some other rules that we encounter when traveling on the roads. Here are a few. 1, you have to walk 2 abreast on the road or side by side. Sometimes we see persons walking 3, 4 in a row. That's not acceptable, right? So it's 2 abreast or 2 persons, right? 2, we have to always observe the color signals on the traffic lights when driving or walking. Sometimes this causes a little confusion, because drivers, once you're in the vehicle and you're driving, you have to go when the light says green. However, as a pedestrian, you are only allowed to cross when all the vehicles have stopped and you are signaled to cross, right? So sometimes there's a policeman that indicates that you have to cross, or when the traffic light says stop and the vehicle are red and the vehicles have stopped, that is an indication that it's your turn to cross, all right? 3, when there's a pavement, always use that designated area for walking and walking only. Because sometimes we see people riding or even driving on these designated spaces. So whenever there's a pavement, only use them for walking. So now we'll be looking at some signs that we would encounter when traveling on the road. Now you had to look at some of these for your homework. Let's determine what they mean. Can you see the sign? Is it A, pedestrian crossing? B, school crossing? C, is it saying crossing is not permitted? Or D, is it saying this is a school zone? If you said A, then you're correct. The symbol you're seeing represents a pedestrian crossing. Here is another symbol. Take a very good look at it. Let's see if we know what it represents. Is it A, a yield? B, is it saying this is a school zone or a school crossing? C, is it saying warning? Or D, is it saying this is emerging traffic? If you said B, the symbol represents a school zone or a school crossing, you're correct. Have you seen this symbol before? If you have, let's see if we know what it represents. Is it saying A, railroad? B, caution? C, stop? D, is it saying slow down? If you said C, you're correct. This symbol represents stop. This is a stop symbol. Here's the other sign. Take a careful look. Can you tell what it represents? Is it saying A, no U-turn? B, U-turn permitted? C, winding crossing? Or D, sharp left turn? Which one? A, B, C, or D? Now, if you said A, then you're correct. The symbol represents no U-turn. So let's take a look at this symbol also. What do you think it represents? A, is it saying do not enter? Is it saying stop? C, is it saying railroad crossing? Or D, a yield? If you said A, then you're correct. This symbol represents do not enter. So when we see the symbol on the road, it indicates that one should not enter that roadway. Does it look familiar? All right, let's see if we know what it means. A, is it saying lane signal? B, lane closed for traffic? C, railroad crossing ahead? Or D, signal ahead? If you said D, then you're correct. This symbol represents signal ahead. In other words, it's saying that a traffic light is somewhere ahead. Now, this has brought us to the end of the symbols. Now, students, I'd recommend that you go over these symbols. Look at them, try to understand what they mean, learn them, because you would encounter them quite frequently when using the roadways. Now we'll be going over some correct attitudes for traveling. 1, when traveling, we know we must observe all traffic rules. But there's something we must consider also. We must exercise what is called the 5 C's. These are care, caution, consideration, common sense, and courtesy. These 5 C's will help us along the road. If you're seated in a vehicle and there's someone seated in front of you and you'd like to pass, it is expected that you'd ask for an excuse. That person would move to ensure that you are able to pass. It is important to note also that the safety of all passengers depend on every person seated in that vehicle or vessel. So always ensure that you're properly seated before the vehicle moves off. Another attitude that is important is to note that smoking in public transportation is prohibited. And now, currently in Guyana, someone can be charged if they're found doing so. Finally, when disposing of garbage during travel, always use the garbage receptacle on board, or keep your garbage with you until you are able to dispose of it in a bin. Also, never throw your garbage through the window of a vehicle, whether it's moving or parked. Now, for your homework, you're required to draw 5 traffic signs that you would frequently see, and you would state what they represent. Number 2, write a short essay of no less than 200 words, and you're to state the consequences of not adhering to road safety rules. In summary, we talked of rules, and we said that they're established guidelines that govern what we should or shouldn't do. We said rules are set up for our safety and protection, especially as it pertains to traveling by land. We looked at some signs that we may encounter on the road. Finally, we looked at some correct attitudes for traveling. Now, this has brought us to the end of our lesson on rules relating to travel by land. I'm Miss Cassandra Lindbergh Finance. See you in our next lesson where we'll be discussing another interesting topic. Bye, students.